Hello and welcome to Ask Coach Cam, where I answer your burning fat loss questions. I thought we'd go with the whiteboard format again, just because last week it seemed to work so well. It seemed to answer more of the questions out there. So what I've tried to do is take the questions I've got in and kind of come up with a topic to kind of try and cover all of those questions rather than answer them specifically in sort of granular detail. And hopefully that makes it helpful for not only the people who ask the questions, but everyone out there. So, yeah, we're going to go ahead and go with the whiteboard stuff. So this week it's all kind of about tiny changes. So last week I covered, what did I cover? I covered sort of kind of yo-yo dieting and the issues with yo-yo dieting and trying to make big changes versus trying to make those small 1% changes, the 1% way. So last week I covered that. This week I wanted to talk more about making those tiny changes and how we go about that. We've already talked about why. This is kind of the how. So first of all, I kind of wanted to talk to you about, let's start drawing. I kind of wanted to talk to you all about habits versus goals and tiny changes versus big ones. So let's get a U here. Okay. When we make big changes, so let's have big changes over here. And the big changes that we might make are go on a heavily restricted diet. Okay, we might do way more exercise than we used to. And to make way for those things, we might get rid of quite a few things in our life. Okay, so this can be anywhere from going out less to potentially, doing some of these things. We might cut out some time with our family and friends that matter to us, all that kind of stuff. And what this ends up being is, this is temporary. Okay? We cannot keep this up forever. We will literally starve. Okay? This, if you really enjoy exercise, you could be the kind of person that does intensive exercise 7 days a week. To be honest, I'm not far off that. I exercise vigorously every day. Sometimes it's not so vigorous. Sometimes it's a walk. But I lift heavy weights 3 times a week. I run twice a week, and that's because I enjoy it. But if we're doing way more than we're used to and way more than we want to do, we're going to find that very difficult. We're basically punishing ourselves. We're trying to punish ourselves, and we're getting rid of that lifestyle. So all of this ends up temporary. And last week we spoke about, this is kind of 6 to 8 week cycle, likely, much more likely, less, okay? Much more likely less than 6 to 8 weeks. But in result, it's all temporary. We can't keep it up. We can't keep up that. We can't keep up on going and punishing ourselves, doing things we don't want to do. And ultimately, we're going to want to bring back in our lifestyle and see the people we love and do the things we love, okay? So this all results in temporary change. And what happens at the end of all of this? Well, usually, because we've got rid of a lot of things that we like doing, not only do we go back to the old way, okay, we potentially do it more, okay? So we go, I can finally eat hamburgers. I'm going to eat as many hamburgers as I want. I'm going to have so many hamburgers. I'm going to have all the pizzas. And we potentially bring in new bad habits that are worse than the old ones, okay? So big changes don't work. Now let's talk tiny changes. Okay, and by tiny, I mean absolutely minuscule. This is, you know, cutting 50 kilocalorie out of your diet. Okay, easy. We can do that any day of the week. It's relatively easy to do. Like I say, for perspective, a grab bag of Walker's Crisps is 250 calories. Alright, so that's not even a grab bag of Walker's Crisps. We can do that. Easy. We can make room for 10 mins of activity. Sorry. We can make room for 10 minutes of activity. Nice and easy. And I use the word activity instead of exercise there. Anything that gets you active, anything that gets you up on your feet and doing less sitting, which is another one that we might make a tiny change. Okay, we can to sit. In order to sit less, we could take calls standing. Okay, you've all probably read articles, sitting is the new smoking, all this kind of stuff. That probably takes it a bit far, but studies have shown that sitting, not only the whole amount of time that we're sitting throughout the day, but the sitting intervals as well are significant in increasing obesity, premature death, all these kind of things. It's terrible for you. It's terrible to sit for long periods of the day. So if we can make tiny changes like taking calls while we're standing up, things like that. Even I'm standing doing this, which is better than the seated in front of the mic stuff. So I get to stand while I do this, which is absolutely fantastic. And we could go on and on. There's so many little tiny changes that you can make to your lifestyle that end up making small improvements to your life instead of these big changes here that we're trying to do. And these are they're at least more likely to be permanent. Okay? So these are much more likely to be permanent. If we can improve on that, sort of week on week, cutting out a few more calories, especially if we're in a surplus, okay, calorie surplus, we got fat for a reason, which means we're in a calorie surplus rather than calorie deficit. So we do need to establish a new normal where we're at least eating maintenance calories, okay? So if we can do this for a reasonable period of time, has a much more chance of sticking. And by reasonable time, I'm talking months, okay? 6 to 8 weeks, that's temporary, okay? This is the kind of time scale I'm talking on. Much longer than that, going months, quarters, years. So we want to be able to keep up these tiny changes for years at a time. Can you keep this up for a year? A lot of you out there are probably saying, yeah, I probably could. If I really tried, I probably could. The answer is more likely no. If you're 99% of people, the answer is no for staying on a heavy route. I couldn't, okay? So don't feel bad about yourself because not many people could, okay? Unless you're an athlete with, intense goals, intense trainers around you, you've probably got a personal chef, all this kind of stuff, or if you're a movie star, maybe you could keep that up. Otherwise, no, okay? Cutting 50 calories, you can eat whatever you want. You just have to eat 50 calories less, okay? So you don't have to deprive yourself of foods, anything like that. You just have to make slightly better choices. It's about choosing, all right? Instead of having pizza and a bag of M&Ms, we have to make that choice. Okay, I can have pizza or M&Ms, and that's part of living a healthy lifestyle, all right? It's all down to the choices we make. It's all about personal choice. So we have to make those choices just slightly better, just to get that 50 calories down, okay? Nice and easy, and we do that permanent versus temporary. But if we want to make these changes, these tiny changes, and we want to make them permanent, they have to be connected to something bigger than just doing this for the sake of it. Again, they have to be connected to a longer term vision, which is kind of what I wanted to talk about next. So again, two sides of the board. Let's switch pens. So if we want to do more permanent changes rather than temporary changes, And these temporary changes are why we yo-yo diet. We go up and down. We get rid of the weight. We put on the weight. Okay? And so on and so forth forever. If we want to make more permanent changes, they need to be connected to a vision for ourselves in the future. Okay? And this vision, I think everybody really should sit down and do an exercise every now and again as well. Don't just do it once and then forget about it. Should be something we go to every now and again. And what an exercise I like to do is the perfect day. As someone who takes care of their body. Okay, but this perfect day, okay, this isn't your fantasy world sort of mega crazy perfect day, okay. That's kind of what holidays are for, okay. Sipping cocktails on the beach, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure we can all come up with all kinds of hedonistic stuff to do on that perfect day. To be honest, if I was going down that route, I've said it before, I'm a big glutton for pizza, so it'd probably involve a lot of pizza. No, what I'm talking about is usually it's best to imagine a work day, okay? So, again, some of these things as well, you know, you might envision, well, I don't work in the future. I'd rather not work. I'd rather never work. What you'll find usually anyway is if you did that on repeat day after day, you're going to have a very unfulfilling life with not a lot of meaning, okay? So part of having a perfect day is doing work that gives you meaning, okay? Stuff like that. But instead of getting stuck on all that kind of stuff, we're just going to talk about health and fitness for today, and rather than the mental and philosophical side of things. And this perfect day is best to imagine as a work day, okay? So as someone who takes care of my body, what do I do on the perfect day, okay? What do I eat for breakfast? I get up, what time do I get up? What do I eat for breakfast? What do I do at work? Who do I work with? What gives me energy? What do I have for lunch? What do I do to stay fit? All this kind of stuff, okay? So those, and particularly when it comes to diet and fitness, those are the questions we want to answer here for the kind of habits that we want to form later, going forward into the future. So, you know, for some it might be, you know, how do you envision yourself working out long into the future on a perfect day? And what's an absolutely perfect workout for you? And maybe you envision yourself, well, I love tennis, and it would be great to have a country club where, you know, I play tennis with the ladies, and then we go in and we have a nice tall glass of lemonade, something like that. That sounds idyllic, doesn't it? It's a nice sunny day, play tennis, all that kind of stuff. And then write it down on paper. You know, what do I eat? Oh, I have, you know, salmon fillet for lunch or something like that, with some mange too and some greens, and it's all really well spiced and really tasty. All of this stuff we want to write down. And usually what I find with a lot of my clients is we're actually not that far from our perfect day, our perfect work day, as we think we might be, okay? It can be quite easy to eat salmon at lunch and things like that, especially if you do meal prep, all those kind of things. And there are ways to get there that are relatively easy, but the ways to get there, the way we get to our vision is through habits. Okay, but vision we can split into, you know, we've got targets and goals. Okay, so we can take our vision, we can split it down and go, okay, well, if I want to play tennis, then I kind of need to get good at tennis, and that's a goal. Okay, get good at tennis, all that kind of good stuff. So we've got vision, targets and goals, and we've got habits. Notice how habits is over here and not by targets and goals. Okay, too much. I hear a lot of PTs, a lot of well-meaning people. on the old Instagram, on all this kind of stuff, talking about habits as though they're goals, okay? Going to the gym 3 times a week, that's not a habit, okay? I don't know, eating clean every day, that's not a habit, that's a goal, that's a target. Those are targets and goals. Those aren't habits, okay? When you think of habits, I want you to think of something automatic, something like biting your nails, something like smoking, okay? Smoking is a habit. People just do it automatically. And what we want to talk about today is these habits. You know, how do we form them? What are they? All that kind of stuff, and kind of dissect the anatomy of a habit. And a habit might, just to take an example of a goal, I want to go to the gym 3 times a week. The habit to do the goal might be every time I come home from work, I put on my gym shoes. Okay? And what that is, really that habit is designed to overcome a barrier. Okay, so we've got our goal of going to the gym 3 times a week after work, but we find, okay, well, when I come home from work, what I do is I go straight in and sit on the couch. And then it's really hard to motivate myself to get off the couch and do all that kind of stuff. And if you remember again last week, being reliant on motivation, it's subpar, it's not ideal. So really, a lot of these habits are designed at overcoming barriers, and that's another good way to think of them. They're a way of establishing new habits. It's a good way to overcome bad habits, okay? It's much easier, in fact, to establish a new habit than it is to just break an old habit. So every time I come home, I put on my gym shoes. And once you put on your gym shoes, it's just a short reach to open the door and walk outside, okay? And this can be connected to anything, of course, and can be connected to your diet, can be connected to any sort of healthy lifestyle change that we want to make. But it is automatic. And ideally what we want is the outcome of this to be that every time you come home from work, you put on your gym shoes. And then even if you weren't intending to go to the gym, you know, you were like, well, I've got a dinner tonight. You still weirdly put on your gym shoes. You're like, oh God, I'm not even going to the gym, okay? That's what we want. That's the kind of automatic, not thinking about it, that we want with habits, okay? Again, kind of talking about motivation, it's kind of related, and it's mental brain power. If we don't have to spend any mental brain power motivating ourselves, you know, if we sat on the couch, we're there telling ourselves, oh, you really should go to the gym. You should go to the gym, 5 more minutes of scrolling. Come on, man, go to the gym, get up, go. What are you doing? And our brain tells us all this stuff. And that we're just expending that mental brain power and just wearing ourselves down, and also filling our head with negative thoughts and things like that. If we just came home and automatically put our gym shoes on, okay, and we just go out the door, what I find as well, a big example I like to use is, even if I'm really low, really down, I don't feel like going to the gym, I tell myself I can walk in through the door and walk straight back out again. That's fine. I just have to walk in through the door. That's the tiny habit that I have to do. I have to walk in through the door. And usually when I walk in through the door, actually, okay, this isn't so bad. This is all right. I'm not as hungry as I thought I was. I didn't need to eat. I'm telling myself a load of crap. And actually I have a really good session, okay? So it's about these habits, about these tiny changes. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of break down the anatomy of a habit, okay? So I'll get rid of my little man. I don't really know why I drew my little man in the first place, really, but there we go. So we've got our habits. They're connected to a vision. They're connected to goals. They're connected to targets, but they're not goals and targets. They're not necessarily actions. They are an automatic process, okay? And what I'm about to draw next comes from James Clear's Atomic Habits, and it is the habit loop, okay? By the way, if you've not read James Clear's Atomic Habits and you're going to read one book on habits, that is the book to read on habits. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4. And it also comprises of the habit loop. Okay, so we've got cue, we've got craving, we've got response, and we've got reward. Okay, but what do these mean? What I like to do is kind of go through a bad habit. We're all quite familiar with bad habits and things like that. One example I like to use is let's use a different colour. Let's use green. Okay, we get on a train, we're going to work, it's our normal commuter train, and we smell a pasty. Someone's bought pasty from a pasty shop, Cornish pasty, sausage roll, whatever, and it smells great. Then we crave the pasty. Maybe we're already feeling a little bit hungry. We crave that pasty. Our response, we get off the train and we head straight to the nearest pasty shop. Okay, and the reward is eating a pasty. Okay, so we smell it, we crave it, we get it, we eat it. This all sounds rather simple, but then when you realise that what this pattern does, if you do this enough times and you go around this habit loop enough times, what happens is you can start removing some things. You can start removing this, because our brain is great at creating shortcuts. So instead of smelling the pasty, the cue is now getting on the train. We get on a train, we crave a pasty. That's not so good. This means every time we get on a train, we're going to crave a pasty and we're going to get off and head straight to a pasty shop, okay? And to be honest, I've been through this cycle when I was commuting to London. My journey suddenly became associated with loads of different things, and this can be walking down the street, smelling of donuts. All of a sudden, walking down the street to work becomes associated with donuts. That's the example James Clear uses to give James his full credit. But the cue, our brain is great at making shortcuts, and this is the main point, okay? It's absolutely fantastic at making shortcuts and reinforcing these bad habits, okay? And the reward isn't always associated with the cue, okay? So, in this might have been, you were feeling a bit hungry anyway, okay? So eating a pasty, it satisfies that hunger, okay? Eating a pasty maybe isn't the best thing to write there. It satisfies hunger, it satisfies that craving, okay? This reward is about satisfying that craving, okay? And if we think of something like a cigarette, when people crave a cigarette, what happens with the reward? They don't actually crave the cigarette itself, they crave the relief that smoking a cigarette gives them. You know, going outside, a lot of smokers will tell you, going outside is a big part of smoking. Being able to get away from the desk, being able to get away from people, all that kind of stuff. Or even, you know, a lot of people start smoking at university and things like that, because getting out of the nightclub and being outside in the fresh air is so rewarding, okay? And then you end up talking to people in the smoking area, all that stuff. Well, all that's associated with the reward, okay? And this anatomy is really important, because we can use this cue to our advantage. If we can trigger a craving with a strong cue, that's going to help us halfway through the habit, okay? So we can use this to our advantage. The response really is driven by 1 and 2, and that's kind of what we do, and that's the action we take. But again, all of this is targeted at getting the reward, okay? So that I think the reward is the big thing people forget. They go, okay, cue, craving, response, and then forget about the reward. What's the reward, especially when it comes to good habits that we want to reinforce? How are we reinforcing them? What's the reward? What's the feeling that we get? How do we keep going with all of this and do that, okay? So, if we pick a good habit, okay, and we know, let's pick going for a run. So we know that the response we want So we can kind of dissect this and start to work backwards. The response we want is to go for a run. Okay, so how do we reinforce a cue and craving? Well, a cue either should be time-based or based on an action that happens every day. Okay, so that's why coming home is such a good cue. And if we can use that coming home to reinforce stuff, meal times is also a great one. You know, straight after a meal, I do X. Really great for reinforcing a habit and progressing that habit and sort of embedding that habit. One thing I probably should have mentioned is that with all of this, you know, when we say that the cue becomes just getting on the train, with all of this, there's an element of, well, that's not great colour, is it? Let's go to blue. That's running out. Let's go to blue. With all of this, there's an element of consistency. We have to keep doing it, okay? So if we're going to be consistent, again, this comes from James Clear, we have to make it so easy, it's impossible to fail. Or at least nearly impossible, okay? This is why so when I talk about going for a run, and we want to get out and go for a run, and putting those shoes on, we want to reinforce that habit of putting those gym shoes on, and putting those running shoes on, and all that stuff as soon as we come home. Your habit to start with, okay, can be as simple as, this is about those tiny changes that we can make, those 1% changes, and the reason is this, okay? So we might make the first habit we do for the first week is every day when I come home, I put my gym shoes on. I don't have to go to the gym. I don't have to do anything. I put my gym shoes on. Okay? And we can do the same with other stuff. We can do, if we want to have a home cooked meal, we want to build that habit of having a home cooked meal every time we come home. And too often we sit down, we let it get really late, and we're like, well, I've not got anything in, and the excuses start to come, and then you eat a load of crap, and then you beat yourself up afterwards. It's just a cycle of horribleness, okay? But what we can do to start to build the habit to get out of that is we can say, okay, every time I come home, I'm going to turn the oven on. I don't have to put anything in it. I don't have to do anything with the oven. All I have to do is turn it on. And the likelihood is, if you turn it on, you'll be like, okay, well, let's look and see what we can cook. Okay, or getting a pan and putting it on the hob. Okay, we might have to establish a few habits to get the response we want. Okay, so it's not always that one thing gives us the response that we want. And we'll kind of go through that in a little bit as well, as to why that is. But it might be a few things. So if we take cooking a meal, well, usually all the dishes have to be washed. That can be a barrier. And this is, again, how it's about removing barriers. That can be a barrier. Having food in, that can be a barrier. So we might create a habit on Sundays to go shopping, all that kind of stuff. And it's all these little things, it's all those little things that are habits that then get us towards the future. And it's also why some of those big changes fail so quickly, so spectacularly, and so easy. It's because we haven't built up all these tiny things. These tiny things matter. You know, being good at doing the washing up, going to the shop and actually shopping for yourself, planning meals, okay, so that when you go to shop, you actually get stuff that's targeted towards a meal. Doing packed lunches for yourselves, all these things. If we want to eat healthy, just going from zero to performance where we're doing the absolute ideal, it's hard, okay? It's hard. Stop kidding yourself that it's not hard. It's hard, especially if you haven't built up all the tiny habits. And this is why also, you know, you see someone at work, and maybe they don't eat great or whatever, but they have a lot of those habits already there. You know, they already go shopping, they already have home-cooked meals, they already have all this stuff. And it's really a small step for them to start having really healthy lunches, okay? They are 10 steps ahead of you. Stop comparing yourself to them. This is about you. That's why there we go. That's why I drew the little man. It's about you. It's about where you currently are, and we have to be completely realistic about that, about where you are and what steps you have to take to get into kind of a performance zone to get to your vision, okay? Which is what we drew earlier. So it's consistency, and to be consistent, you have to do it every damn day. Consistency is not 80% of the time, 100% of the time, okay? And the only way you're going to do that is by making it so damn easy. If I need to underline this 3 times, okay? Easy. Easy is the key word. Make it so freaking easy, you cannot fail. It's impossible to fail, okay? It's virtually impossible to fail at getting home and putting your shoes on. Don't say, because sometimes that action associated with putting your shoes on is going out for a run and punishing yourself, okay? And again, that comes back to that vision. Why are you why those big changes? Why are you punishing yourself? Why are you getting out and pounding the pavements if you hate it, okay? That's not going to form a habit. We need a reward, okay? So let's say we like running, we like going out in the fresh air. We want to form this habit. So, I mean, kind of going for a run, we've already covered it. We've got the act of putting on shoes. So as soon as we get in, we put on running shoes. Okay, but it's not just put on running shoes, it's as soon as we get in, okay? That's the cue, because we're talking about a cue here. What's the cue? It's coming in through the door, okay? And putting on running shoes. Maybe the habit is, before I leave work, I put on my running clothes, okay? And then I get home, I just drop bags and go straight back out the door. Maybe that's our habit. We come in, we drop a bag and go straight back out the door, okay? We don't have to go for a run. We can then walk straight back in. But that's the level I'm talking about. When I'm talking tiny actions, that's how tiny I'm talking. And that's how we do these. And all of a sudden, this habit loop, if we form this habit, it just starts happening automatically. We don't have to dedicate any brain power. All of a sudden, we find ourselves halfway through a run, and we're going like, God, I didn't even want to go for a run today. I'm really tired, but we're out there, we're going for a run, okay? But we put on our running shoes, and again, consistency is part of this. So if we're performing, we're starting to go around this habit loop. We're starting to provide that consistency. Maybe some of the cravings we start getting is some of the wind in our hair. Some of those endorphins that get released when we go for a run. Our body starts to mentally prepare ourselves. Okay? Mentally prepare ourselves. And then when it comes to reward, the most important bit, to be honest, I can list off millions of these, the rewards for going for a run. Okay, we can talk about mental health. Okay, we can talk about, the endorphin high, which is closely linked. We feel good about ourselves. We feel good. We feel healthier. Okay, and maybe for good measure, replenish some of those electrolytes with a tasty Gatorade as well, which is what I do. By the way, I'm putting this beacon out there. If anyone knows the way to get Gatorade easily in the UK, I'll be your best friend, okay? But I have a Gatorade after a run. Number one, we've usually used up a lot of our carbohydrates, so we do need a bit of sugar. A bit of sugar is okay. And that really, around our exercise, should be when we're consuming sugar. Or at least we should target more of our sugar around that time of the day. Number two, things like Gatorade, things like Powerade, all this kind of stuff, they're full of electrolytes, which we've lost through sweating, so it helps replenish those, and water as well. It obviously consists of water, so it hydrates us and things like that. But you can go on and on. There's loads of rewards to running. But also, when we're talking about making it easy, and our goal is to go for a run, stop punishing yourselves on runs. Stop going, just keep going, just keep running. If you get, right, another reward, I get to see some sheep, okay? See sheep. Be in nature. You know, if you kind of enjoy running and you also like some of this stuff, reward yourself. Be in nature. Find a good running route that takes you through the forest, okay? All these kind of things. And stop and smell the flowers, okay? That's a phrase for a reason. If you're really struggling on a particular run, and occasionally I will do this, if I'm really struggling on a particular run, I'm not going to keep pushing and punish myself through all of that. I'm not training for anything. I'm not training for a half marathon or anything like that. I'm running just to stay fit. I'm running to stay active, okay? So if I stop and walk for a bit, and to be honest, what I like to do as well, again, it's kind of a little trick, is to give yourself no way out, okay? So I usually run away from home, and then the second leg is back towards. So if halfway I'm really lagging, maybe I'll walk for a bit. It's going to be quicker for me to run to get back. There's no shortcut back home, okay? I'm not doing like a route like this, where halfway through I can just go, well, I'll take a shortcut, okay? I actively try and run away from home and then run back. Because it just gives you that little kick up the arse to run a little bit more once you have had a bit of a walk. But stop, see the sheep, have a look at the sheep, enjoy it, see the animals, see nature. If you see something like it, oh, that's cool, pause. You know, what's going on here? The other day I ran through the park, there were those people splashing about in the river. I paused my watch, I stood there, I enjoyed the sun, I enjoyed watching children play in the river and all this kind of stuff, and all the families out enjoying the day. It was great. It was a great little stop on my run. Don't punish yourself, reward yourself. Reward yourself for going on that run. Don't put blinkers on and those headphones in and just ignore everything going on around you. Enjoy it, okay? But that's kind of the anatomy of a habit. And we've talked a little bit about each one of these things, but the way James Clear does it, which is also useful to point out, okay? And by the way, if those rewards are strong enough, and they have to be real as well, okay? These rewards have to be real. You can't make up rewards. You can't convince yourself that you love being in nature if you're not really that fussed about being in nature, okay? They have to be real. This is connected to a deeper part of your psyche where you can't kid yourself. There are no tricks, there are no shortcuts. It has to be genuinely rewarding. Take weightlifting for me as well. I like lifting heavy things. That's why I like weightlifting, okay? That's a real reward for me. That's not a reward for someone else. And again, this is why it's got to be personal, okay? You cannot do someone else's training program. You cannot do... Your vision is totally different to somebody else's vision, okay? In my vision, I lift weights. Somebody else's vision, they don't. They don't lift weights. They hate it, okay? So why are you doing it now if it's not in your vision, okay? Stop it. Stop doing it. Do something that you enjoy. Okay, but back to James Clear, okay? The way James Clear puts it, it's obvious. The cue is obvious. Again, so it's that getting on the train. It's a specific time. If it's a specific moment in the day that happens every day. Because again, if we're trying to form this consistency and that event doesn't happen, that event only happens 80% of days, and you're only going to reinforce the habit 80% of days, okay? Consistency. So it's something that's going to happen every day, and it's going to be obvious. And do not underestimate the strength with which that word is said, okay? To crave it, okay, and this is partly associated with the reward, it's got to be attractive. Okay, it's got to be an attractive offering to crave. To crave the response, okay, when the cue happens. So again, if we've been out punishing ourselves, we're actually not helping this whole cycle. If we want to form a habit of running every day or whatever it is, we're not helping this by going out and running and really punishing ourselves and having a really hard time, okay? If we make the run nice and easy and gentle and we enjoy it and we have fun and we're being more active, and having fun really is the key component of that, it's a lot more attractive than a run where we're like, oh, why are you running 7 minutes a kilometre, you klutz, run faster. You know, we're telling ourselves that. And again, we're doing the same thing that we do on the couch then. We're then expending a lot of mental energy instead of just going, you know what, it's great, I'm out on a run, I'm having fun, I'm out in the fresh air, I'm really enjoying myself. That makes it more attractive. It reinforces the habit because we want to repeatedly go around this loop. We want that consistency. that attractive, very, very important, very crucial. Okay, response, easy. Okay, and we talked a little bit about easy already, but this is, you have to have the ability to do it, okay? So if the response you want, you don't have the ability to do, then we need to change the kind of desired response, okay? It's about it's about having the ability to do it. So if you don't have the ability, if your response is home cooked meals, for example, and you don't know how to cook home cooked meals, you're going to find this a lot harder, okay? So what we might do, instead of forming a habit of home cooked meals, a target rather than a habit that we might set is okay, well, I don't really have the skills to home cook meal myself every day, home cook meal for myself every day. Maybe what I'm going to do instead is every Sunday when I have time, I'm going to cook a new recipe, okay? And for now, I'm just going to I eat too much takeout. So the habit I'm going to do is I'm going to cook an oven-based meal. Just going to get kind of, ready meal. It's better than a takeaway. It's that a 1% improvement. It's a 1% improvement for yourself, okay? You say, okay, for the next few months, I'm going to have oven, kind of ready meals, get some of the M&S healthy ones or whatever, while we learn how to cook for ourselves, okay? And then the reward also of being able to cook for yourself rather than being reliant on those kind of ready meals is it's going to be cheaper, okay? But it has to be easy. You have to be able to do it, okay? If it's too hard, if we're not very good at cooking for ourselves and we always burn stuff and things like that, this isn't as easy, okay? And also that ease helps us with the consistency. And then lastly, satisfying. It's got to be satisfying, okay? And really the only person who can tell you what is satisfying to you is you, okay? So again, if you would love to live that country club life, go play tennis, or you love that golf club life and you want to play golf, all that kind of stuff, it has to be actually satisfying, okay? Golf is another exercise I do, another activity I do. It's great because it takes me about 4 hours to go around the course, and that's a lot of walking, unless on the occasion I get a buggy and drink, but we won't talk about that. We won't include that necessarily as an activity for that day, but it's got to be satisfying. It's got to be rewarding. You've got to genuinely enjoy it, okay? And there's got to be an actual reward at the end of it. And we can make this reward, okay? So if the response itself isn't necessarily satisfying, we can add on to it, okay? We can add that Gatorade at the end of the run, and then the cue becomes associated with getting the Gatorade. The cue doesn't become associated with the response, which is the run, which we can use this to do things we don't necessarily enjoy if the reward is strong enough, because the cue is targeted. Our brain makes that shortcut. The brain goes, oh, if we go for a run, we get the ice cold Gatorade, okay? We can jump from this to this by doing these, okay? I guess the only thing to be aware of is that you do just do that, okay? You come home and you drink a Gatorade, all right? Your brain has to think you have to go through this, okay? You have to do this. You have to go around the loop, okay? Because if we start coming home and drinking a Gatorade, guess what? You're not going to do the run, okay? It's a reward. And think of other ways to reward yourself and things like that. But that's kind of the anatomy of a habit. I hope that's kind of helped you in thinking about those small changes that you can make, those small, tiny, easy changes versus those big changes. It's about consistency, and that's why we want tiny changes, okay? That's how we get those tiny changes to be permanent, okay? And for it to be permanent, we have to have it all connected to a vision. We have to have a vision for ourselves that we actually want, okay? What do you actually want? As someone who takes care of themselves, as someone who takes care of their body, what do you do to stay active? As someone who takes care of their body, what do you eat? And that's all connected to our vision, and then we can start building these habits toward that end, okay? There has to be a direction. And this is another thing with a lot of people that go on diets, they just start pounding the pavement, going out for a run. To what end? Well, to lose fat. There are other ways to lose fat. Why are you doing that specifically? Well, I don't know, that's what I was told to do and that's what society's told me to do. All this rubbish, okay? You need that strong vision for yourself. Only you can come up with that, and that's going to inform the habits that you're going to form for yourself, okay? And I believe that's... Oh, I've rambled a lot today, okay? That's all I've got time for. Yeah, please let me know in the comments what you thought about all of this. Ask any new questions for next week in the comments. Like and share. Hit that notification bell so you get notifications when we go live. All that good stuff. And you can even subscribe on www.the1percentway.com. And yeah, I'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Goodbye for now.